Have you ever had that moment where you look back on a big event in your life, or even in the world, and suddenly you see it in a completely different light? It's like a puzzle piece clicks into place and the whole picture changes. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that instinct to defend your initial understanding of what happened. We all have that. It's comfortable, it's safe. But author and thinker Naomi Klein asks us to do something much more difficult. She asks us to look at those big, shocking events, the crises that stop the world in its tracks, and question the story we're being told while we're still in a state of shock. Her core idea, which she calls the Shock Doctrine, is actually something you've probably felt in your own life, just on a smaller scale. Imagine you've just had a terrible shock. Maybe you got some really bad news, or you were in a small fender bender. In that moment, your thinking brain, the part that makes careful plans and weighs pros and cons, just shuts down. You go into survival mode. You're operating on pure instinct, just trying to get through the next few minutes. Now imagine someone comes up to you in that vulnerable, disoriented state and says, "Quick, sign this paper, it's for your own good." You're not in a position to read the fine print. You're not thinking about the long-term consequences. You just want the feeling of safety and control back. You'd probably sign. Naomi Klein argues that this is exactly what happens to entire societies after a major crisis. A natural disaster hits, a terrorist attack occurs, an economic meltdown sends people into a panic. The public is reeling, terrified, and desperately looking for leadership and a way back to normal. And in that window of confusion, while people are still in shock, Klein shows how groups with a specific political or corporate agenda often swoop in. They push through radical changes, privatizing public services, cutting social safety nets, implementing policies that would be incredibly unpopular during calm times, because the public is too distracted, too frightened, and too desperate to put up a fight. As Klein herself puts it, the shock doctrine is about exploiting moments of collective trauma to engage in radical social and economic engineering. This creates a natural tension inside all of us. On one side is our instinctive thinking. It's fast, it's emotional, and it wants clear, simple answers, now. It wants to believe the person who sounds most confident and promises a quick return to safety. This is the part of us that is most vulnerable to the shock doctrine. On the other side is a slower, deeper awareness. This is the part that asks questions, that is comfortable with complexity, and that thinks about the future. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they feel like a life raft in a stormy sea, even if that raft has a few leaks. The shock doctrine works by deliberately overwhelming our deeper awareness and keeping us stuck in that panicked, instinctive state for as long as possible. You can see this in your own life. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true. Maybe you found out the truth about a holiday figure, or you understood a family situation years later in a new way. That feeling of your reality shifting is deeply uncomfortable. Our first reaction is often to reject the new information, to cling even harder to the old, comfortable story. We fool ourselves because it's easier than facing the disorienting truth. We tell ourselves we must have remembered wrong, or that the new facts can't possibly be right. It's a protective mechanism. Now scale that up to a national level. After a crisis, a new story is often presented to us. It's usually simple. It identifies a clear villain, and it offers a clear, if extreme, solution. Our instinctive brain, craving order, grabs onto it. Our deeper awareness, which might be whispering, "Wait, this seems too simple," or "What about the long-term effects?" gets drowned out by the noise of fear and the authority of those presenting the story. We accept things we would normally question because we are, in a sense, not ourselves. We are in a collective state of shock. Understanding this pattern is the first step in breaking its spell. It's about giving that slower, deeper awareness a chance to catch up. It's about recognizing that feeling of panic and confusion, not as a signal to blindly follow, but as a red flag to pause and ask more questions. When a new crisis hits and the air is filled with urgent voices demanding immediate, radical action without debate, we can take a breath. We can remember that times of shock are when we need our critical thinking the most, not the least. It's about being skeptical of simple stories in complex times. This cracks open the entire system, revealing the blueprint they hope you never see. We start in a place of simple understanding, where the world feels stable and predictable. Our daily routines are set, our beliefs feel solid, and we operate with a certain confidence in how things work. In this phase, a crisis is just a crisis, a terrible event that we respond to with a shared sense of urgency and a desire to help. We see a problem and we want to fix it. Our reactions are almost instinctual, driven by emotion and a fundamental need for safety and a quick return to normalcy. This is where we are most vulnerable, operating from a place of good intentions, but with a simplified view of the forces at play. Then we enter the confusing middle, and this is where the real struggle begins. The initial shock of the event starts to fade, but it is replaced by a thick fog of complexity and contradiction. This is the phase Naomi Klein so powerfully warns us about, where the challenges are not just the crisis itself, but the storm of information and proposed solutions that follow. You are bombarded with conflicting narratives from authorities and media, each one claiming to have the only answer. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding on to the old way of things because it's familiar. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this is the most disorienting transition of all. The simple world you knew is gone, but a new one hasn't yet taken its place. It is a period of profound uncertainty where it becomes incredibly difficult to tell who is acting in good faith and who is exploiting the chaos to push through policies that would be rejected in calmer times. Everyday life becomes a minefield of small decisions that feel loaded with new meaning, and trust in institutions you once took for granted begins to erode. This tough middle phase is the core of the Shock Doctrine strategy, relying on our collective disorientation to make us pliable. It is designed to overwhelm our capacity for thoughtful consideration, to keep us in a state of reactive panic. But if we can endure this discomfort, a new clarity begins to emerge. This is not a return to the simple beginning, but an arrival at a more mature and powerful understanding. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, and that pause is everything. This is the crucial shift Klein outlines, the move from the knee-jerk reaction to the thoughtful response. The knee-jerk reaction is what they count on. It is the demand for immediate, often extreme solutions that sacrifice long-term stability for the illusion of quick security. It is the impulse that leads us to willingly give up freedoms for promises of safety. The thoughtful response, in contrast, is born from that pause. It is the product of working through the confusion, of questioning the easy answers, and of seeking out the root causes of the crisis, rather than just its symptoms. We start noticing the patterns, how the same players always seem to benefit from these moments of disaster. This new clarity is not about having all the answers, but about knowing the right questions to ask. It is understanding that a true recovery cannot be built on the exploitation of a terrified population. It is grounded in the everyday realization that the best decisions for our communities are made with deliberation, with empathy, and with a focus on building resilience, rather than installing control. This is how we break the cycle. We move from being a subject of the shock doctrine to becoming a citizen who recognizes the tactic and refuses to play along. The chaos loses its power when we meet it with a calm, collected, and critically engaged mind, choosing the difficult but righteous path of the thoughtful response over the easy seduction of the knee-jerk reaction. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice something subtle shifting within us. It is not a loud, dramatic change, but a quiet recalibration, like the slow turning of a ship at sea. The horizon looks the same, yet our course has been fundamentally altered. We start to question the automatic thoughts that have governed our days, the shoulds and musts that felt so heavy. We realize that much of what we thought was our own ambition, our own desire, was actually a script we had been handed, a role we were playing without ever auditioning for the part. This is where the real work begins, not in fighting the outside world, but in gently interrogating the one we have built inside our own minds. This process of questioning can feel incredibly lonely at first, as if we're the only ones who have ever stepped off the well-marked path. But this feeling is part of the illusion. The path is crowded with people who are just starting to glance at the map, wondering if there might be another route. We are not alone in this. We are simply among the first in our immediate circles to give voice to the quiet hum of dissonance that many feel, but few stop to examine. It takes courage to stop and ask why we are walking in a particular direction, especially when everyone else seems so sure of the destination. That courage, however, is contagious. By simply asking the question, we give others silent permission to do the same. As we sit with these questions, we might observe a fascinating psychological pattern at play, something known as the Barnum effect. This is our tendency to accept vague, general personality descriptions as uniquely accurate to ourselves. For so long, we have accepted the broad labels handed to us by culture, by marketing, by social media feeds, the achiever, the consumer, the busy person, and we have molded ourselves to fit them. We have worn these generic descriptions like a custom-tailored suit, believing they were made just for us. Now, in this space of reflection, we can see that suit for what it is, a mass-produced costume. Letting go of that false fit is liberating. You will likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because life gets simpler, but because you are no longer trying to solve them while wearing a mask. The choices become more authentically yours. This newfound clarity does not mean life suddenly becomes a smooth, effortless ride. Challenges still arise. The difference is in how we meet them. Old triggers may still fire, but the explosion feels more distant, less personal. We can observe the frustration without becoming the frustration. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much, not because they have magically vanished, but because our relationship to them has transformed. A traffic jam is just stopped cars, not a personal affront to your schedule. A critical comment is just words, not a damning verdict on your worth. This shift is profound. It creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space, we find our true power to choose. We are no longer puppets reacting to every tug on our strings. This journey inward inevitably leads us outward again, to look at our relationships and our communities with fresh eyes. We start to see the same patterns of borrowed identity and performative living in those around us, and instead of judgment, we feel a deep sense of compassion. We understand the pressure they are under because we have felt it too. This compassion becomes the foundation for a new way of connecting, one based not on shared consumption or achievement, but on genuine human presence. Conversations become richer, less about what we do or what we have, and more about what we feel and what we wonder about. We begin to build a world, however small, that operates on a different set of rules, a different rhythm. It is in this rebuilt world that we truly grasp the meaning of freedom. It is not the freedom to acquire more or to do whatever we want without consequence. That is a shallow, lonely kind of liberty. The freedom we are discovering is something far more substantive. It is the freedom to be who we actually are, with all our quirks and complexities and contradictions. It is the freedom to define success on our own terms, to value time over things, connection over status, and growth over comfort. This freedom is not a destination we arrive at, but a muscle we exercise every day through small, conscious choices. It is choosing the walk over the scroll, the home-cooked meal with a friend over the trendy restaurant photo op, the quiet evening with a book over the noisy party we feel obliged to attend. Together, we discover that this path, though it began in personal discomfort, leads to a collective awakening. We are not just freeing ourselves, we are participating in the creation of a culture that has space for more authentic versions of everyone. We are building a new story, one where value is measured in well-being and resilience, not in productivity and possessions. This is a hopeful, humanizing process. It requires us to be brave, to be vulnerable, and to trust that the truest version of ourselves is more than enough. It asks us to listen to our own inner wisdom over the deafening roar of the crowd. And it is here, standing firmly in this hard-won authenticity, that we understand Naomi Klein's key insight in its fullest, most visceral form. She reminds us that this kind of freedom is not an abstract concept or a political slogan. It is a physical experience of relief and rightness, like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit after a long, long day of walking. You never realized how much constant, grating pressure you were enduring until the moment you slip them off and feel the solid, supportive ground beneath your feet for the very first time. The relief is immediate and profound. You can stand taller, you can walk easier, you can finally move through the world in a way that feels natural and true. You are home, in yourself, and the journey to get there makes every step forward feel like a celebration.